This video is about splashing Wilson at Rebak Marina hard stand in Langkawi, Malaysia. Our haul-out report so far, part 38. This is my introduction to sailing Wilson on YouTube. I own a 2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Rebak Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Rebak Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand. And here's a photograph of my boat just after I finished putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. Before the boat went in the water, I had to install the rudder and assembly and lock it in place, and it wasn't as easy as I thought. I'd put on 2 spaces thinking I'd have plenty of room, and there wasn't enough length in the shaft to screw the bolts in place inside the engine compartment. So I had to ply this apart and then lift the rudder up to get the right length of the shaft so that the bolts would screw in. You can see the bolt holes on the shaft, and once the shaft was lifted up, I was able to then make sure that the bolt holes lined up with the bolt holes in the bracket, and there's the bracket and the 4 washers that hold the shaft in place so it doesn't drop in the water. And here is the finished product with the arm and the swivel that rotates the rudder, and there's the assembly that had to go together. And here you'll see the rudder just has just a small amount of a gap in the top between the hull and the rudder to rotate. So the next day was the splash. So the Jamal and his crew brought the travel lift over to my boat and assembled all their gear and lifted the boat and took the stands away from underneath the boat, and my wife and myself then sanded back some of the copper coat, abrased the copper coat so that when it went in the water it'd be an effective stop against barnacles and such where the stands were. Here's the boat being moved away from where it was on the hard stand for 13 months and moved towards the splash area by Jamal and his crew. I'll just explain a little bit. It took 13 months to do it, mainly because I was only working 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, because at 68 years of age and suffering from type 2 diabetes, I don't have the energy a young bloke has, and that meant that I would have a rest during the very, very hot periods in the middle of the day. You may wonder why Jamal reversed the boat into the splash area, and it wasn't until we actually started to lower the boat that I realised why. And basically it was easier to step onto the front of the boat when the front of the boat was lined up with the concrete platform than it was to use a ladder and stop the process and put the ladder in place so that everybody could climb up the ladder. From this angle you can see the dusty finish on the brown area of the hull where the copper coat was painted on, and when I abraded it, the dust still settled, and of course that washed off when the boat was put in the water. So here you can see everybody gathered. If you have a look at the yellow t-shirt on the right, it's the new port manager or harbour manager, whatever you call him, and he was catching up and learning all the different processes, and obviously watching a few boats being dropped in. Whether he was supervising or not, I don't know, because he didn't say much. But on the left hand side you'll see myself in the yellow t-shirt, and Robbie Anderson and his helper Andrew, and the workers on the crew of the travel lift. And then once the boat was lowered down to a position, we were able to step on rather than use the ladder, and it was more than logical way of doing it. They use the ladder to climb up onto the boat once the boat's taken out of the water, but when you're putting the boat back in the water, this seems to be much more logical. Here Jamal is reversing the travel lift backwards so that he could lower it down safety and not hit the front of the bow of the boat on the concrete area. So once all the boys were happy with their tying of the lines to keep the boat in the centre of the docking area, the boat was then lowered into the water. And you'll see that in a moment. If you look to the right of the picture, you'll see me tying off the bow line so the crew member can pull it in place if it shifted too far across. And now I'm tying off the stern line to do the same thing. The idea is with the halyards, the lines, was to keep the boat in the centre of the bay so it wouldn't damage the boat by knocking onto the pylons. So because the boat hadn't been in the water for so long, it was time to make sure that the raw water pumps were pumping water out of the exhaust, and that meant that the engines were kept cool. And that was on both the starboard and port sides, and Robbie Anderson and Andrew made sure that both engines were doing the correct thing. A couple of problems occurred, but they were fixed. And here I am fiddling with the forward and reverse to make sure that the props are turning forward and reverse on both starboard and port engines. So then it was a matter of making sure that the fenders were tied in place. I put 5 fenders on, and Robbie Anderson was tying them while I reversed the boat out of the travel lift bay. And if you look, you can see my wife brought her garden along with her. And we'll see how long that lasts in the salt water. And we'll get plenty of rain up in front and plenty of sunshine, and if it doesn't like the sunshine, it'll die anyway. Because I don't often go into marinas and such, docking and a boat is a learning experience or learning curve every time I do it. Using the forward throttle on the starboard side and the reverse throttle on the port side, I'm able to rotate the boat around in a tighter circle, so that we can face south and head down to a dock where we were told to dock the boat. And you'll notice a little bit of black smoke, and that's because 13 months on the hard and a bit of work done on the engines, it was just clearing its throat. And hopefully that won't be a continuing problem. I don't over-rev the engines. I like to run them at about 1700 revs. A lot of people run them a lot higher than that, but these are 7-year-old 20 horsepower engines that probably not quite due for a rebuild, but you know, 2 years from now they'll have to be probably rebuilt, and then I'll plan to replace them with 30 horsepower engines. That's if I can afford it. So that's it. We're travelling down to the marina berth on A dock at Reback Island Marina, berth number 19, which was an outer berth, so that we were there for 2 days before we moved on to Tolaga Harbour and get the sails fitted up. So here's an image of my wife standing on the stern of the boat in the galley area, giving us a bit of a wave, and that's the first time the boat's touched the water in a long time. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of splashing my boat Wilson, Reback Island, Langkawi. This is part 38 of my haul out report so far.